said. Most important thing.
What's he see?
It's okay. Just go inside.
Hello friends, welcome to Fastcuts. Today we are going to watch the 2017 horror mystery movie, It Comes at Night, directed by Trey Edward Schultz, starring Joel Edgerton and Christopher Abbott, along with many other prominent actors. An entire city is affected by a virus. A family manages to escape to a forest from their virus-affected hometown. One day, their father gets affected by the virus, and gradually he lost his conscience. His daughter Sarah and Sarah's son Travis, with masks on their mouth, sit beside him and weeps. Then Sarah's husband Paul, despite their father being alive without any kind of movement, puts him in a basket to bury in a place far away from their home. When Paul asks Travis whether he had anything to tell his grandfather, he says final goodbye to his grandfather with great grief. After that, Paul shoots his father-in-law and then burns him in a pit. That day night, everybody was sad and was having their dinner quietly. After dinner, Sarah tells her concern about Travis, who is just 17, and had to see his favorite person in the world, his grandfather, being killed by Paul in front of him. But Paul didn't feel anything wrong, and what he did is he believed Travis is mature enough. Travis went to his room to have some sleep. While lying on the bed, he notices the photo of him and his grandfather hanging on the wall, which makes him sad. In the next scene, Travis opens the door of a room nearby and finds his grandfather sitting inside. He approaches his grandfather, and suddenly his grandfather jumps towards him, all transformed like a ghost. Travis screams out seeing that. Sarah quickly wakes Travis up from his dream and informs him that somebody entered their home. When both of them get downstairs, Paul was already with his mask and gun. They hear somebody stabbing at their door and entering their house. The intruder somehow manages to escape from Paul's gunshots and sits in a corner. The intruder was a young man with a gun in his hand too, named Will. When Paul inquires about him, Will tries to make them understand that he is all alone and did not appear there to hurt them or spread the virus. But Paul, who was in utter disbelief, hits on Will's head with the gun. Will fall unconscious. Sarah and Travis then drag Will into a room. Meanwhile, Paul goes and checks whether Will brought somebody with him and eventually finds nobody else inside and nearby their home. The next day itself, Paul and his family puts Will in a basket and take him to tie onto a tree. Will is still unconscious. Then they all close their doors and windows as tight as possible, keeping in mind that nobody else should intrude. When it became noon, Will comes to his consciousness and tries to scream, but fails as he had cloth filled in his mouth and head covered with a sack. The family was able to hear Will, but they are not giving much care to that. Paul intended to know whether Will was infected by the virus, so if tomorrow Will's body undergoes any changes, the family can confirm that he is infected. That night, Travis goes to sleep, and after some time he goes out with a torch. Hearing Will's sound echoing, Travis approaches the tree where Will was tied, and suddenly Will appears before Travis. It was Travis's nightmare again. It's been 24 hours, and the Paul goes to check on Will. When Paul checks Will's hands, finding no signs of infection, Paul confirms that Will is not affected by the virus. Paul shows Will a bottle of water and asks Will to be honest with him. When Paul asks why he trespassed the place, Will replies that he came searching for food for himself and his family. As it was darkness everywhere, Will assumed nobody lives there. Paul, who still mistrusts Will, further inquires that wasn't Will here now, because his family members got infected, and he ran to escape from them. Will tries his maximum to make Paul realize that he had an uninfected family, including his wife and son, waiting for his return with something to eat. Eventually, Paul decides to trust Will. In the next scene, Paul discusses the conversation between him and Will with his family. Sarah opined that if at all Will's claim is true, then they must help Will's family, letting them not starve to death. Paul finally decides to help Will and they get out in his car. Paul asks Travis to look after his mother. Then Paul warns Will that if what Will claimed turns out to be a lie, he will kill Will, and Will agrees to that. Paul drives the car, while Will sits in the back seat of the car giving directions to Will's place. Paul, who still doubts Will, looks at him through the front mirror, thinking that Will still might do something harmful. After covering enough distance, somebody shoots toward their car, and Paul loses his control, leading the car to hit on a tree nearby. When Paul took his gun, another gunshot from someone unknown broke the car's window. As Paul took his gun and hid under the car, a person approached and Paul kills him with his gun. Paul sees Will hitting somebody when he got out of the car and shoots him to death also. It was a gang of robbers who attacked them. Will tells Paul to not shoot the other man, but Paul kills him too. Paul killing people like that made Will angry, but Paul doesn't seem like he was guilty. Instead, he doubts Will whether he was one of the robbers. Will, who's still angry, makes Paul understand Paul's mistake by explaining that the robbers might have informed us about what's going on in the city, and we could have also found something to eat and use from their place. Paul realized his mistake, and then both of them searches the bodies of the robbers, then puts the dead bodies inside a pit and left. After a day, while Travis was playing with his puppy, Paul's car returns, and Travis informs his mother about that. Paul was accompanied by Will and his family. Will introduces his wife Kim and son Andrew to Paul's family. While they sit together for lunch, Paul explains to them several rules like not going out at nighttime as it is a forest, attacks of wild animals could be expected anytime, having food only twice a day to save ration, food having to be collected from the forest itself, because there are only a few chickens left, nobody allowed from outside, as one never knows whether the outsider is infected. If at all somebody intrudes, then one must use the guns provided to each. When Paul thinks of other rules to explain, Sarah interrupts and tells him not to leave everybody in boredom. Paul shows Will the room reserved for his family. At night, Will and Kim happily go to sleep as now they feel like they got a whole new life. Travis giggles, hearing Will and Kim from the next room. The next day morning, Paul, Travis, and Will get out of the house to get to know about the surroundings. When Will finds wood logs, he teaches Travis how to cut them. Days passed, and both families became too friendly enough to consider each other as siblings. One night, when Travis was lying on his bed, Kim arrives to kiss him and then spit blood on his face. Travis suddenly woke up from that nightmare and goes to wash his mouth. After that, as Travis couldn't sleep, he goes down and finds Kim there. While they engage in a conversation about why they haven't slept yet, Travis's eyes get stuck on Kim's breasts. When Kim sarcastically pointed out his inappropriate behavior, Travis leaves quickly, saying goodnight to her. The next day, their dog, tied to the tree nearby, starts barking unusually, looking at the forest. While they were cutting logs, the moment they unties the dog, it ran towards the forest, and the rest took their guns out. Paul tries to prevent Travis from running behind their dog by screaming at Travis not to follow the dog, but Travis refuses to obey Paul and enters the forest, only to find his dearest dog missing. Will finds Travis, and Travis claim that he heard sounds of different animals and something else there. While Will points his gun at the place where Travis claims something was present, Paul comes there and starts scolding Travis for getting inside the forest without any precautions. When Will wanted to search the place where Travis heard the sound, Paul resisted doing so as it could be dangerous. That night, everybody sat silent while having their dinner to not let Travis feel sad about his dog's demise. Later, Paul goes to Travis while he was drawing pictures in his room and consoles him. Travis apologizes back for being disobedient. In the next scene, while Paul and Will have drinks together, they discuss their past life, old job, and all. Paul reveals himself as a passionate history teacher, and Will claims that he is a mechanic like his father was. Then they go to sleep after wishing good night to each other. It became midnight. Travis can't sleep and suddenly hears a sound leading him downstairs. He finds Andrew lying down there and tries to wake him up. Then Travis leaves to sleep after taking him to Will's and Kim's room. Suddenly Travis hears another sound from downstairs and finds that this time, the sound came from Will's room. When Travis slowly approaches the door, he hears somebody trying to break the door. Terrified, Travis rushes to Paul and claims somebody else is in the house. Paul took his gun, puts his mask on, and headed toward the place where Travis heard the sound. Paul and Will find their dog covered in blood outside, while Sarah and Travis inside the house are unaware of what's happening. When Sarah inquires, Paul lets her know that their dog is infected, and some animal bit it too. When Travis hears that, he stays stubborn about seeing the dog, but Paul completely disagrees with the fear that the virus might spread. Then both Will and Paul clean up the mess and blood. After that, they dig a pit to put the dog inside it and leave it on fire. After that scene, all gather around the table and presume that the dog would have gotten the virus from some person. Slowly they all start having doubts about whether Travis touched the dog, which, if happened, might make Travis virus infected. Travis swears that he never touched or even approached the dog properly, and doubts that Andrew might have opened the door, as the first person he saw downstairs was Andrew. Andrew claims he doesn't remember anything clearly. When Travis assures that he didn't do anything that would make him virus affected, Kim becomes upset about others doubting her son. When the discussion slowly turned into an argument, Paul ordered them to not step out of their respective rooms until they gets to know who the infected one is. Will agrees to that, and the two families go to their rooms. Once Paul's family entered their room, Paul questioned Travis about what happened. Travis confirms that he didn't touch anything, but Andrew did open the door. Paul then asks whether he touched Andrew then. Travis admits that he held Andrew's hand till he reached the bedroom. Hearing that, Paul becomes tensed and scolds Travis out of concern. Later Travis goes to sleep and wakes up suddenly as he saw a nightmare. He spits blood on his hands and becomes frightened. He also finds his grandfather sitting in front of him like a ghost with a weird scary face. He panics and wakes up from his actual nightmare. The next day early morning, Travis, who wanted to know what happened to Will's family, goes to their room. Travis overhears Will and Kim talking about their doubt about Andrew being affected by the virus and secretly escaping from there as soon as possible. Travis rushes to Paul and informs Will's plans. Paul, when realizes that Travis is right, asks Sarah what to do next. Sarah felt that if they are trying to escape, they might take the rest of the food left in this house with them. That should be prevented at any cost. Paul tells Sarah to keep their gun and mask ready to face Will and his family. Scared, Travis wants Will's family let go free, because he felt that just the way his parents killed his grandfather, they might also kill the kid. But Paul explains to Travis how Will's family might steal their food and spread the virus to others. Travis starts crying because he felt that as he touched Andrew, he might also get infected, and Paul will kill him too. Sarah pacifies Travis, saying that nothing like that will happen ever. Paul and Sarah go near Will's room, stood outside, and inquire about Andrew, who was crying. Will, who locked their room from the inside, lies that there is nothing to worry about. Andrew saw a nightmare. From the way Will said that it was evident he was lying. As Will kept on saying lies, Paul decides to kick the door and open it, but Will opens the door eventually. Paul aimed his gun against Will when he opened the door, and Will realized that they knew about Andrew's virus infection. Will acquire Paul's gun somehow and threatens to not approach them until they take necessary things from there and leaves. Will slowly get down the stairs. While Will orders Kim and Andrew to come outside the room, Sarah arrives with a gun and Kim is shocked. Will agrees to not harm them, but in return, Sarah must not harm them back too. Will tells them that on the count of 3, everyone will put their weapons down. When Will dropped his gun down, Paul acquired it and beats up Will. When Kim got scared and ran, Sarah followed her and told her to not move. Kim cries and begs Sarah to leave them alone, but Sarah shuts her up. Paul ties up Will and brings him while Kim and Andrew cry out loud. Travis was hearing all of that but didn't come out at all. Paul takes them to the forest to kill them. When Will falls suddenly, Paul scolds him to stand up. Suddenly when Will stood up, he hit Paul so badly. Seeing that, Sarah shoots Will and he dies right away. When Kim tried to run away, Paul stood up and shot both Kim and Andrew. Travis becomes sad as he got scared that his parents will kill him the same way. The next day itself, Travis gets infected and lies on the bed unable to rise. Eventually, Travis passes away, and now Sarah and Paul are left waiting for their death, as they too got infected by the virus. Despite their struggle and took efforts to prevent the virus, they eventually failed to overcome it, and they dies because of the same virus. The movie ends here. Hope you liked this video. Do comment your thoughts below in the comment section, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the video. Until then, bye.